Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good morning, my friends. It is a brisk 37 degrees here at the studios of Jim Hinckley's America in, sunny Kingman, Arizona. It's pretty much sunny every day here lately. We just don't seem to be doing, I've said this time and time again, but my goodness, it's getting dry around here. We're going to be hunting jerky instead of deer. That's just the way it, there's just no other way around it. Well, today we're going to have a discussion about books. I'm going to be sharing some books that I've had recommended to me and books that, I've been hearing about and finally got around to reading. And I hope you will consider also joining in here today and share some of your books, ideas, thoughts, things of that nature. And so with that said, I'm going to get started here. Got a few little news items and a couple other odds and ends. And going to start out a little bit of news items. We've got some things we want to try to bring to your attention. There's some great Route 66 centennial programs coming down the pike. I'll have a lot of information on that on the Jim Hinckley's America website coming up real soon. And we'll see what else we can come up with for you. Let's see, just a little quick thing here with a little technical difficulty. And there's always a technical difficulty, isn't there? Yeah, these things happen. What we're going to do here is try this another way. The first book I have for you is kind of fun. These were sent to me, these recommendations. And for the trivia buff, this is a great way to, this is some great trivia stuff. It's called Marilyn Monroe Died Here, and it's D-Y-E-D. So that's, it's kind of a good play on words. So let's kind of get right to this. This is actually a two-part series that someone has written. The author of these is Chris Epting, E-P-T-I-N-G. Now, these are a little bit older books. And the other one he did was James Dean Died Here. Kind of a cheerful title, to say the very least. Let's see if I can get a date here. And these are great road trip inspiring books. These date back to 2004, but my understanding is that you can still get these on Amazon. And to give you an idea, we'll start with Marilyn Monroe Died Here to give you kind of a sneak peek at what they've got going here. This, for example, under John Wilkes Booth, we have the Dr. Mudhouse. and near Waldorf, Maryland. He has directions here and then details on the house. This is where John Wilkes Booth was cared for by Dr. Mudd. And rightly or wrongly, Dr. Mudd was convicted and spent some time in prison for his association with John Wilkes Booth. And that's where by the way, better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all. That's where the name comes from. Your name is Mudd. Pretty interesting. Another here we have, but the whole book is based around these kind of things. Locations you can go for a good selfie and link yourself to some curious trivia, music, Festival for Peace, the Atlanta Pop Festivals here, Checkered Board Lounge, Reuben Rick, the scene for Dennis the Menace's house in the old television program with Jay North as Dennis the Menace. All that information is here for you. James Dean Died Here continues with this theme. You can find out where the bridges of Madison County were, or scenes from The Blob. If you've ever been curious where the downtown diner, now the Chef's Diner in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, for The Blob with Steve McQueen. The Crash Site for Buddy Holly. Both books, well, kind of something you can pop in the glove box for a little bit of trivia and exploration. The next book. Now, this one, I really am impressed with this book. Now, this is another older title, and it shouldn't be controversial, but in this day and age, it is. This is definitely an older book, 1990, but you can still find it. Ronald Oakley's God's Country, America in the 1950s. I found this book to be very, very well researched, quite thought-provoking. It delves into really an in-depth look at the 1950s and cast aside your preconceived notions. And even if you lived through the 1950s, this is kind of surprising, things that we didn't realize. They have a whole section on Harry Truman, but they get into things like the good years, 1953 to 56. And the chapters tell a lot here. Fighting Jim Crow, for example. The Winds of Change. The Leisure Society. Women, Love, and Sex in Eisenhower's America. Of course, well, sex, that grabs a lot of attentions. But it really is surprising, the development of marketing. Things that we've thought how psychology really became a play. Vance Packard's work about the hidden persuaders and how that's relevant because how that got into politics today. But they get into the Route 66 climate, the culture, behind the scenes, the Jim Crow laws, the rise of African American communities, Dixiecrats, and a lot of this ties into how we live today, what we're doing today. All very, very good stuff. Now, this book was written in 1946, but I'm glad to say it's been reprinted by Rio Grande Press, and it's become University of New Mexico Press. I'm sorry. This is a guidebook to Highway 66, written by Jack Rittenhouse. It's a little pocket guide, and the story behind this is really interesting. Jack Rittenhouse traveled Route 66, and he kind of thought that with the post-war years, Route 66, of course, he was right in how popular the highway would become. But he misread how popular his guidebook was going to be. He actually hoped to make a couple bucks with this, and that didn't quite happen. But in the era of Route 66 Renaissance, this little guidebook has become extremely popular because it gets into details of businesses. It gets into a little bit of trivia about the communities, and it's really kind of a time capsule, Route 66 time capsule. And I really suggest that you have this. A fellow Route 66 fan out of Michigan, Scott Sheehan, it's become quite a hobby for him to travel segments of the road and try to find the locations where these different businesses were, and if possible, find photographs, postcards, things of that nature. I'll give you an example of this on page 65, and he does this east to west and west to east on mileage. Tells you where to set your odometer and check your mileage. But at 244 miles, Conway, Texas, he says that there was a gas station, a small garage, a cafe, a store, an auto court. No gas station for the next 25 miles. And then at 263 miles, he has the entrance to the Amarillo Army Airfield. And then he tells a little bit about Amarillo with this. Population 70,000. He has the altitude. He has the radio stations listed. 4 leading hotels and 40 smaller ones, 36 auto courts, garages, and all facilities. And he has a whole lengthy situation here on listing the hotels: the Amarillo, the Capitol, the Herring, the Pioneer, the Ross, the Milliner, the Blackstone, and the Elk. And then he lists the auto courts: the Grande, the Longhorn, Log Lodges, Pueblo. Gives you an example why this is such a great time capsule for the Route 66 enthusiast. And please, if you have some books to suggest, I'd like to hear from you. Type your message in here and or call in, and let's talk about some of these great road trip inspiring books. This one is a new book, and for those of you familiar with Arizona, if you're a fan of Arizona hiking, Arizona adventures, Roger Naylor is kind of a household name. He's really done a lot of writing. He does a lot of speaking engagements. One of my favorite books of his was Boots and Burgers. Great places to hike and great places to find a good hamburger. His newest book is Arizona National Parks and Monuments, Scenic Wonders, Cultural Treasures of the Grand Canyon State. I've been delving into this a little bit since I got back. I acquired this book before our fall tour, and now I'm working through it and making some notes. But some places I want to explore this winter. Winter is the ideal time, obviously, for getting out and exploring the desert. But a lot of detail here, like on Tuzagut National Monument. He provides lists the nearest cities, when the park was established, the park size, and he has a good description of the history of the site and its development and the attractions. And he has contact information, website information, what facilities are available, whether each location is pet friendly, camping, program events, special notes, all kinds of good information here. This is Arizona National Parks and Monuments, Scenic Wonders, Cultural Treasures of the Grand Canyon State by Roger Naylor. This one came to me just I just had a text message if I was aware of Jim Ross's books. Jim Ross is a pioneer in the Route 66 Renaissance movement. Him and Jerry McClanahan, Shelley Graham there in Oklahoma, and now Reese Martin, of course, is picking up that mantle. And I do not have Jim Ross's book on bridges And I thank you for calling that to my attention. My library is deficient on that one. I'm aware of the book, and I've been meaning to add it to the library. I'm well aware of it. Jim Ross painstakingly documented the history of every single bridge, most of the low water crossings on Route 66 from Chicago to California, all the different alignments. That particular book I do not have, but I do have Jim Ross from Ghost Town Press, his book, Oklahoma, Route 66. This is highly recommended if you're a fan of Route 66, and you can go as deep as you want. You can become totally anal. He's got some great maps showing the different segments, which ones were early roads pre-1926 that were incorporated into Route 66, which ones were the different alignments, for example, at Warwick, Oklahoma. But really well researched, lots of great historic illustrations. Just a really impressive work. But everything Jim Ross does is well researched. Jim, outside of the Oklahoma area, and the real roadies, if you will, the Route 66 community, Jim Ross is not as well known as he should be. And he and Shelley Graham have been working on a Route 66 centennial book I'm looking forward to. But I can highly recommend Oklahoma, Route 66. This is a first-rate book, and it's from Ghost Town Press. But he gets into why the towns have the names they do and why some of the alignments followed the course they did. And lots of historic photos and lots of photos from the era when Route 66 was first bypassed and kind of waning a little bit. And a lot of these landmarks, of course, are gone now. Got some real exciting news to share with you. And we got some great sponsors of this program that we need to give a shout out to. We'll do that in just a moment.
Well, we got some pretty exciting news recently. Mm-hmm. We did. Coffee with Jim is officially an officially certified Route 66 centennial program.
Wow, congratulations.
I know. I was like, really?
That's awesome.
So for everyone listening who might not be familiar with what that means,
right.
This is a certification granted by the Route 66 Road Ahead Partnership. And it basically recognizes all the different people and the initiatives out there who are contributing to preserving and promoting and just celebrating this amazing highway.
Yeah.
And, we spend so much time talking about Route 66, diving into its history and talking to people who have connections to the Mother Road.
Yeah, it's like the heart and soul of the show, really,
It is. And
I mean, it's what draws people in.
It is.
That sense of history and adventure.
Absolutely. And I think it's amazing, thinking about how something that was built, almost a century ago?
It's incredible.
Can still have such a powerful impact on us today.
It's not just a road.
No.
It's an experience.
It is.
It's a journey. It's a story.
And we couldn't tell those stories, though, without the amazing folks who help us keep the show going.
Absolutely.
You know who I'm talking about.
Of course. The sponsor.
Our sponsor.
The backbone of the show.
They are like those roadside attractions.
Yes.
Each one adds to this kind of bigger picture.
Yeah, totally. And they each bring something unique to the table, just like the different stops along Route 66.
Okay. So first off, we got to give a shout out to the Roadrunner Lodge Motel in Tucumcari, New Mexico.
Oh, the Roadrunner.
Yeah. I was just talking about stepping back in time.
Yeah.
That is the Roadrunner.
I bet.
You walk in that place and you are instantly transported back to the 1960s.
Wow. Just the vibes alone must be amazing.
Oh, it's amazing.
Must make you feel like you're really on that classic Route 66 road trip.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri.
Ooh, I've heard of that one.
Have you been there?
No, not yet. It's on my list, though.
It should be. It's one of the oldest continuously operating motels on Route 66.
Really? Wow.
Can you imagine all the stories that place could tell?
Oh, all the people who've stayed there over the years, the journeys they've been on.
Oh my gosh. Road trip memories for generations.
That's the magic of Route 66, right?
It is. And then we head down to Texas,
Ooh,
to the Cactus Inn Motel in McLean.
Never been to McLean.
Well, you got to go because the Cactus Inn,
Yeah.
it's all about blending the past and the present.
Interesting. How so?
Well, it's like they've kept that classic Route 66 charm,
Right.
but also added modern updates.
So it's like the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you can experience that nostalgic feel, but with the comfort of, today.
That's cool.
And, for our listeners who are maybe thinking, I want to do a Route 66 road trip,
Yeah.
but planning. Ugh, who has the time?
I know, right? Between work and life and everything.
That's where our friends at Road Trip USA come in.
Yeah, tell me more.
They are the bespoke road trip planners.
Ooh, bespoke.
I know, right? They create custom itineraries
Wow.
across the U.S. and Canada.
So no matter what you're interested in, they can tailor the trip to you.
Exactly. Whether you're a history buff, a foodie, an adventure seeker,
That's amazing.
they'll map out the perfect route.
Wow, talk about taking the stress out of planning.
But you just show up and enjoy the ride.
That sounds incredible.
And speaking of enjoying the ride, let's talk about the Enchanted Trails Trading Post and RV Park in Albuquerque.
Ooh, Albuquerque, land of enchantment.
It is enchanting.
What makes this place special?
So first of all, imagine waking up to views of the Sandia Mountains.
Oh, breathtaking.
It is. And then you've got this 1940s trading post
Wow, talk about a blast from the past.
on site. And vintage travel trailers
No way.
and a collection of classic Hudsons.
Hudson's, like the cars.
The cars.
That's incredible.
And I got to give a huge shout out to our Patreon supporters.
Yes.
You all are the reason we can keep doing this.
They're the fuel in our tank.
That's a good one.
I try.
And speaking of fuel,
Okay, I see what you did there.
we have some really amazing guests coming up on Coffee with Jim.
Oh, I'm always excited to hear who's coming on the show.
We've got Kaisa Bartuli.
And who is she?
She is the program manager of the National Park Service Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program.
Wow. Talk about an expert.
I know. So she's like right on the front lines of efforts to protect Route 66.
Yeah.
And then we have Gloria Nash, who wrote the book Looking Back at the Future.
Intriguing title. What's it about?
It's all about the New York World Fairs.
World's Fairs. How does that tie into Route 66?
Well, we're going to talk about those visions of the future and how they connect to the whole idea of Route 66.
That's a cool angle. I like it.
I'm excited for that one.
Me too. Who else?
And get this, we've got Whitney Ortiz.
Okay, and who's Whitney?
She is a world-traveling adventurer.
Wow, a globetrotter.
So we're going to talk to her about how she sees Route 66
Oh, interesting.
from a global perspective.
I bet she has some really unique insights.
I can't wait for that conversation.
Sounds like some fascinating episodes coming up.
It is. It is. And so I want to leave everyone with this thought.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. I love it.
What's your connection to Route 66? Even if you've never driven on it.
Yeah.
How has it touched your life?
Is it the music?
Zeus.
The movies? The stories?
Exactly. What is it about this road that captures our
Right.
imagination?
Right. Why do we still care so much about it?
So think about that.
Yeah, give it some thought.
And in the meantime,
What?
be sure to subscribe to Coffee with Jim
Yes.
so you don't miss out on any of these amazing stories and conversations.
And until next time.
Keep the spirit of the open road alive.
Here.
Excellent question. Glad you asked. Having to backtrack a little bit here. The Oklahoma Route 66 book by Jim Ross. Yeah, there is a section here. That's a great question. Let's see here. The Canadian River Valley. Yeah, the Pony Bridge there on the Canadian River was just recently rehabbed in a pretty spectacular fashion. It's an example of blending historic preservation with modern highway engineering. And this was quite a project. But in the book, it talks about the Canadian River Valley having much to offer the Route 66 explorer, the Pony Bridge, and then Bridgeport itself to the ruins at the Hinton Junction. The sense of being lost in time continues all the way to Hydro as the road meanders through wooded terrain. And it is pristine, yes. That section of Route 66 is really astounding, complete with concrete paving, actual curbs and gutters. It was finished in 1931, and the depth of detail Jim Ross provides in this book is well worth the price of admission. That section from the Pony Bridge into Hydro and Weatherford is pretty astounding. It's funny when you look at the past. How could that be deemed a good idea to have really no shoulder, to have concrete curbs and gutters on the edge of the highway? Just seems like a recipe for disaster. But it worked. It worked for many, many years. This next book is a real. This one is. I'm really happy. This was gifted to me by a very dear friend for a birthday a couple years ago. This is the Crosley, Two Brothers in a Business Empire That Transformed the Nation, by Rusty McClure, David Stern, Michael Banks. Today, a lot of people are not familiar with Crosley. The car, the radio, the appliances, and the things the Crosley brothers did. But these fellas really transformed the way we live today. The inside cover reads, just like Wilbur and Orville Wright or Walt and Roy Disney, Powell and Louis Crosley could not have been succeeded without each other. Powell was the creative genius whose personal charisma and flamboyant lifestyle epitomized the Crosley Corporation and its products and achievements. Louis provided the practical know-how working behind the scenes to find innovative ways to turn his brother's visions into a profitable reality. As boys, they built a primitive car, and then they did all kinds of things, but radio was their first big one. They established one of the most powerful radio stations in the world. They pioneered the production of portable radios and small home radios that could be bought at a reasonable price instead of the big floor models. Then they got into appliances, doing things like refrigerator with a radio built into the door of the refrigerator. Just before the war, they'd had a passion for the automobile since they were children. But it was in the just before World War II, they came up with the idea for a small car. The Crosley was, a dwarf car to say the very least. And the Crosleys had a thought behind this. American cars were getting larger and larger. And to the Crosley brothers, I think they put it this way: why use a battleship to cross the river when a rowboat will do? And the little Crosleys were kind of a joke. They were circus cars, things of that nature, until World War II. Because they often got up around 50 miles to a gallon of gas, the little cars, pickup trucks, and cars, all of a sudden they had a little bit of a value. They never amounted to a major manufacturer, but they survived producing automobiles into the 1950s, early 1950s. The Crosley Hotshot was their little sports car. And the story of the Crosley automobile is quite intriguing, but the whole book is highly recommended. It's very, very inspirational, and it provides a great deal of insight into the unique business climate that made so many of these things possible in the United States in the early 20th century. I have to share a little anecdote here, a little personal story, if you will. My experience with Crosleys. Crosleys were very, very small, 25, 30 horsepower cars. And when I was a youngster, I was between cars and looking for just transportation. And this would be back mid-70s. And down at Autos Unlimited on Andy Devine Avenue, which is Route 66 here in Kingman, They had a, I can't remember what year, 40s Crosley station wagon on the car lot, and it was pretty cheap. So I stopped in to look at it, and Crosley's had brakes that were adequate for what the car was. They were Halsey cable activated, basically an aircraft, a small light plane brake system. Somebody had shoehorned a 110 horse flathead Mercury V8 into this Crosley. And Rick Freeman tossed me the keys, told me to take it for a drive. I jumped in the car, fired it up, and I had just let up on the clutch. That damn thing almost came up on two wheels, shot across the parking lot, and was headed right out into Route 66 traffic. I put both feet on the brake pedal, and I had the handbrake on, and sliding that thing. I stalled the car, and I left it where it stopped and handed him the keys. That was a death trap, if there ever was one. That was one scary experience. Thank you. That's another great question. I quote Edsel Ford's travel journal a lot in my presentations and programs. It is not available to the public. This exact reprint that I use of Edsel Ford's travel journal from the summer of 1915, that was gifted to me by the Historic Vehicle Association for my assistance. In 2015, the Historic Vehicle Association recreated Edsel Ford's trip by following the National Old Trails Road in a 1915 Ford. And that's how I got the travel journal. I appreciate you asking, but no, I'm afraid that one is not available to the public. But I do use it a lot, and I have some of the photos that I use in my various presentations. This next book, I've quoted this a lot. It is available on Amazon, but it is, if you get the hardback, it's not cheap. It's called Motoring West, Volume 1, Automobile Pioneers, 1900 to 1909, by Peter Blodgett and University of Oklahoma Press. If you're a fan of road trips or automotive history, this is not just research, but it's a series of time capsules. It's really intriguing. What he's done is collect journal entries, newspaper articles, magazine articles from this period, 1900 to 1909, and he has reprinted them. And it's about motoring trips in the West during those years. And it's really interesting the way these things go. One of my favorite stories in this book is an article that was published in the Scientific American Supplement, number 1335, August 3rd, 1901. And it details the attempt by Alexander Winton, president of the Winton Motor Carriage Company of Cleveland, to become the first person to cross the United States by automobile. Alexander Winton has a bit of a backstory. He was a Scottish immigrant and made his first fortune during the bicycle boom, but he was a very early proponent of the automobile and using it to replace the horse. And he was a bit premature in his attempt to prove its viability, if you will, for cross-country travel, as evidenced in this article. Winton took with him a journalist by the name of Charles Shank. And it opens with this: covering the North American continent from the Pacific coast to the Atlantic Ocean in an automobile has been attempted by Alexander Winton, president of the Winton Motor Carriage Company. That the expedition failed is no fault of the machine, Mr. Winton used, nor was it due to absence of grit or determination on the part of the operator. Neither was the failure due to roads. The utter absence of roads was the direct and only cause. It's articles like these that really fueled the good roads movement, encouraged the automobile industry to lobby the government as well as put their money into development of roads, such as the Lincoln Highway. But it's really interesting to read what they came up with on this trip. He says, having been with Mr. Winton on this trip, I saw and experienced things the likes of which automobile drivers in civilized portions of the North American continent know not of. Nor can an active imagination be brought to picture the terrible abuse the machine had to take or the hardships its riders endured in forcing and fighting the way from San Francisco to the point in Nevada where the project was abandoned. And it gets deep into, give you an idea here. Instead of running the 32 miles, we clipped off 44 miles between Oakland and Port Costa as a consequence of mistaking the road to San Pablo and going around by way of Martinez. A complete lack of highway signage. Reached Port Costa too late for the number 4 trip and had to wait when the Transcontinental Express was ferried over. All morning, the sky, which during the 3 weeks preceding had been clear and bright, was heavy with clouds. And then he mentions the roads were like adobe when dry and hard. They make opportunities for good driving. But when wet, they're like a sponge soaked with moisture. Your wheels cut in, spin, slip, slide from the course, and suddenly your machine is off the road and into the ditch, buried to the axle. And then the fun begins. You pull out the block and tackle, wade around in the mud, get soaked to the skin, chilled from the effects of the deluge, make fastenings to the fence or telephone post, and pull. Pull hard, dig your heels into the mud, and exert every effort at command. The machine moves, your feet slip, and down in the mud you go full length. Repeat the dose and continue the operation until the machine is free from the ditch and again on the road. It's astounding what these people were willing to accept in their attempts to drive cross country. In parts of this article about trying to motor west, there were some days when they were doing this, pulling the car from the ditch, pushing, pulling, unloading the car, loading the car. 14 hours on the road to cover 10 miles. just quite amazing. We've got some fantastic programs coming down the pike. Next week, we're going to have a special guest here from Kingman, Arizona. He is the owner-manager of Import Corner and former city councilman Jinga Arik that will be coming up. And we've also got Gloria Nash coming up. She's written a fantastic book on the New York World's Fairs. A little bit of a detour from Route 66. But that's going to be a great program. I'm looking forward to talking with her. And there's just we just got a litany of tremendous guests coming up, and I think you're going to enjoy the program. We're looking forward to visiting with Kaisa Barthuli of the National Park Service Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program, Whitney Ortiz, really dynamic young lady, an adventurer, world traveler. So lots of good things coming down the pike here. We're working on a couple things here with Jim Hinckley's America. We're going to be setting up a fan club for the podcast where you'll have behind-the-scenes look at programs and information and little special offers, things of that nature. I should have details on that for you probably in the next week. We've encountered a lot of delays. We had planned on having a gift shop on the Jim Hinckley's America website with some Jim Hinckley's America swag and Route 66 centennial items. The snag primarily being that I'm modern Amish. Technology throws me for a loop, and I'm having to learn as I go. So I haven't mastered this e-commerce thing. But if you want to support a good cause and do something for the holidays, Kingman Tours, Kingman.Tours, project with Talisman Magic Marketing and Kingman Main Street. They have an online gift shop with unique, one-of-a-kind designed Kingman swag and Kingman Route 66 Centennial merchandise. That's Kingman.Tours. And there you can also, they've revived it was launched in 2014. The project was abandoned shortly after, but they've launched a Route 66 Walk of Fame, and they've revived that at Depot Plaza. And you can purchase a brick through the Kingman Tours website. And it's a great way to honor people who've made contributions to transforming Route 66, keeping it alive. And at the same time, you're supporting a good cause, Kingman Main Street. They're involved with a lot of great projects besides Kingman Tours, the narrated self-guided historic district walking tour. They, excuse me one second. They're also currently working on with the owners of the Hotel Beale here in Kingman on a facade restoration program. So that's Kingman.Tours. And I'm really proud to be a part of that project because it's just great. It's a virtual tour. It's literally a virtual tour of historic Kingman. So if you're in jail somewhere and you have internet access, you can still take a tour of Kingman. But the primary thing is it's an immersive physical walking tour to public art, downtown Kingman, as well as historic sites like the Territorial Era Jail. So that's there for you. Of course, the Jim Hinckley's America website now has been revamped, updated, and it's JimHinkley'sAmerica.com. You can find all kinds of great road trip inspiring information there. I hope you enjoyed this morning, talking about books. We still have a couple minutes here, but if you have any books that you can recommend to inspire road trips or like the ones we've mentioned, and I'll have a blog post about some of these books up pretty quick to give you more information. Just a quick recap. Motoring West, Automobile Pioneers, 1900 to 1909. Now, we try to do these literary programs every couple months because, I like books, and the library here fills up pretty quick. Crosley, Two Brothers and a Business Empire That Transformed the Nation. Those were two of the books we talked about this morning. Oklahoma Route 66, Jim Ross. Ghost Town Press. Breaking the Banks in Motor City by Darwin Lumley. The subtitle was The Auto Industry, the 1933 Detroit Banking Crisis and Start of the New Deal. Arizona National Parks and Monuments by Roger Naylor. A Guidebook to Highway 66 by Jack Rittenhouse. God's Country, America in the 1950s by J. Ronald Oakley. And then the two books by Chris Eptig. James Dean Died Here and Marilyn Monroe Died Here. And Marilyn Monroe's book is D-Y-E-D. Those are the books we talked about this morning. If you didn't take notes, that's okay. We will have the program published here shortly. And as with all our archived programs, you can go back and revisit some of the things we've talked about, like with Scott Dahl, CVB director in Springfield, Illinois, and Jeff Ladd, film producer John Padgett, and others. We're getting close to the Christmas season. We're going to keep this thing going. We've got some great programs lined up in the next 4 or 5 weeks. Like say, I'm really excited to talk with Kaiser Barthuli of the National Park Service Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program. I don't have a date for that one yet, but it will be in January. And we should have information on that soon. Hey, any questions? Anything I can answer for you? Any books to recommend? Well, I always like to hear your input on this and other projects, programs that we've got going here at Jim Hinckley's America. So chime in or contact me through Jim Hinckley's America. And you can always find us. Well, I shouldn't say always. Facebook had us closed out for about 2 years, but Jim Hinckley's America Facebook page. And drop us a note. We've always tried to come up with some interesting things, and we like telling people where to go, but we also like you to tell us where to go. So we always like to hear about great diners, restaurants, attractions, and of course, books. Lots and lots of books. My friends, I have really enjoyed our visit this morning. I hope I've encouraged you to gather up some reading material for those long, cold winter days, and books that will inspire a road trip or two. So with that said, I'm going to bid you adios. Cutting it a little short this morning, but unless you have something to chime in on, we'll button this thing up today. But join us again for the next program. I think you're going to really enjoy this perspective. I'll be posting some teasers this week on Jim Hinckley's America. My friends, it's always good to get together for our coffee on Sunday mornings. Hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Sometimes it feels like I'm sitting here in the room beating my gums by myself, but I know we've got the audience out there. And I appreciate each and every one of you. My friends, until we meet again, well, vaya con Dios.
Hey everyone, ready to switch gears a bit. Today we're going to try something a little different. We're taking a deep dive into Coffee with Jim. We're going to be guest hosts today.
Yeah. We thought we'd give you a peek into what makes this podcast tick and why it's become such a hit with folks who love all things Americana.
It's like hitting the open road with a buddy who knows a ton about history and can spin a yarn like nobody's business.
Right. And this friend, Jim Hinckley, he's not your average history buff. I mean, he's an author, a Route 66 expert, and he's got this knack for connecting those big historical events with the stories of everyday people. It's amazing.
It's not just about like dates and names, you know? It's the stories behind them all that make history come alive.
Exactly. Like I remember one episode he told this story about a Route 66 diner owner who hid a famous outlaw from the cops. It's a small story, but it really captures that rebellious spirit. You know, the one that made that era so cool.
And he doesn't just stick to Route 66, right? He talks about all sorts of things. Everything from the rise of the American car industry to those ghost towns that time forgot.
What I find really interesting is how Jim goes beyond the typical history book stuff. He digs into the stories of the people and places that often get left out, you know? Like he's uncovering those hidden gems of American history.
So we've got a great storyteller with fascinating topics.
Yeah.
What else makes Coffee with Jim so unique?
It's the personal touch. He brings his own experiences into the mix. It feels like you're just sitting around with him, sharing a cup of coffee, and just chatting about history.
And then there's the whole live stream aspect.
Right.
Absolutely. The live stream is awesome. It lets people chat with Jim and each other in real time. Makes it a real community.
Yeah, like a virtual hangout for history buffs. You know, after listening to a few episodes, I can see why people love it.
For sure. It appeals to a wide audience. History lovers, travel enthusiasts, anyone who just likes a good story.
It's a great way to learn about American history and culture, you know, but in a fun and interesting way. Yeah. You know, it might even inspire you to hit the road yourself. Discover some of those hidden gems he talks about. America's got so much to offer.
Now, before we jump into some highlights, we want to talk to you directly. Like we're the hosts of Coffee with Jim, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to slip into those roles for a minute and give you a taste of what it's like to be part of the Coffee with Jim gang.
So just kick back and relax. We're going to wrap things up Coffee with Jim style and give you a preview of what's coming up next week. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Coffee with Jim. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Jim Hinckley and this fascinating podcast of his.
It's been fun exploring this unique blend of history and travel and personal stories. Jim really knows how to draw you in.
We got to give a big shout out to the road crew. That theme song is killer. Gets you ready to hit the road.
Yeah, you just want to grab a coffee and go exploring. It's the perfect music for the spirit of adventure that Jim brings to every episode.
Totally. And speaking of hitting the road, be sure to join us next Sunday morning at 7 o'clock Arizona time on Podbean for another episode of Coffee with Jim.
Our guest will be Jinga Urich of Import Corner. He's a former Kingman, Arizona City Council member.
That sounds like an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
Jinga's got a ton of knowledge about the history of Kingman. Bet he's got some cool stories.
I can't wait to hear what he has to say about how Kingman has changed over time, from a railroad town to a Route 66 hub.
Yeah, think of all the history packed into those streets and buildings. I bet Jinga can really bring it to life.
Absolutely. He's a huge advocate for his community and just loves its unique character.
So mark your calendars, folks. Next Sunday morning at 7 o'clock Arizona time on Podbean. Don't miss it.
Until then, safe travels and happy listening.
Well, folks, it's been a blast hanging out with you today on Coffee with Jim.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun stepping into the guest host role for you.
Hope you enjoyed the ride.
We hope you'll keep exploring the world of Coffee with Jim with us.
Don't forget, every Sunday morning at 7 o'clock Arizona time, right here on Podbean.
Until then, keep that spirit of adventure alive.
And keep on exploring those hidden gems that make America so unique.
Safe travels and happy listening. We'll see you next week.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.